There are people who walk into a room and naturally take up space. They speak freely, laugh loudly, ask for what they want without apologizing for existing. And then there are people who learn something very different. People who learned to become quieter, smaller, easier to handle. Not because that's who they were, but because somewhere along the way being too much felt dangerous. Maybe nobody ever said the words directly, but you felt them. Stop being sensitive. Why are you acting like that? Don't embarrass me. Just stay quiet. And slowly, you disappeared in ways nobody noticed. The strange part is, most people who learn to stay small don't even realize they're doing it anymore. They call it being easygoing, or independent, or low maintenance. But deep down, they're still afraid of taking up emotional space. And if that sounds familiar, there's something important you need to hear by the end of this video, because the habit that protected you as a child might be the exact thing quietly hurting your life now. Imagine a child sitting at the dinner table. They're excited to say something, maybe something small, maybe something stupid, maybe something only a child would find interesting. But before they finish speaking, someone interrupts them, or laughs, or ignores them completely. So the next time, they speak a little softer, then eventually, not at all. That's how it starts. Not with one giant traumatic moment, but with hundreds of tiny moments that teach a child. It's safer if I don't inconvenience people. It's better if I stay unnoticed. My feelings create problems, and children adapt fast, faster than people realize. A child can turn emotional survival into a personality before they even understand what's happening. That's why some adults apologize constantly, even when they did nothing wrong. Why some people rehearse texts 10 times before sending them. Why some people feel guilty asking for help. Why compliments make them uncomfortable. Why they shrink themselves in relationships. Why they say it's okay when it's absolutely not okay. Pause for a second and think about this. How many parts of your personality are actually you, and how many were built to avoid rejection? Because those are two very different things. A lot of people think trauma always looks dramatic, but sometimes trauma looks incredibly quiet. It looks like the kid who never caused problems, the teenager who handled everything alone, the friend who says, "I'm good no matter what happens." People praise these behaviors all the time. You're so mature. You're so calm. You never ask for anything. But sometimes that maturity was actually emotional suppression. Sometimes being strong really meant, I learned nobody was coming to comfort me. And eventually you stop expecting comfort at all. That's the dangerous part. Because when you spend years making yourself emotionally smaller, you start believing your needs are too much. You hesitate before speaking. You over-explain yourself. You become hyper-aware of other people's moods. Not because you're weak, because your brain learned survival through emotional caution. You learned how to read tension before it exploded. You learned how to stay agreeable. You learned how to disappear before becoming a burden. And honestly, people who learn to stay small often become incredibly emotionally intelligent. They notice everything. Tone shifts, facial expressions, energy changes. They can walk into a room and instantly feel if something is wrong. But there's a painful side to this. They become experts at understanding everyone except themselves. They know how to comfort others, but freeze when they need comfort too. They give people endless patience, while secretly feeling guilty for having emotions at all. And over time, this creates a strange loneliness, because people only know the version of you that never fully speaks. The edited version. The careful version, the non-inconvenient version, not the real one. And here's the twist nobody talks about. The world often rewards people who stay small. They're easier to manage, less confrontational, less demanding. That's why so many people remain stuck there for years. Because survival habits don't always look destructive at first. Sometimes they look responsible. Until one day you realize you don't know how to express anger, or ask for reassurance, or say what you actually want. You just know how to adapt. and adaptation becomes exhausting when it never stops. Maybe you've felt this before. Someone asks, "What do you want to eat?" And your immediate answer is, "Anything is fine," not because you truly don't care, but because somewhere deep inside, having preferences still feels unsafe. Small moments reveal deep wounds. That's why healing usually starts in ordinary places. Saying what movie you want to watch, admitting you felt hurt, setting one uncomfortable boundary, asking for help without apologizing. Tiny things. But for someone who learned to stay emotionally invisible, those tiny things feel enormous. Here's something else most people don't realize. When children constantly shrink themselves, they often become adults who tolerate emotionally unhealthy relationships. Because familiar pain feels strangely normal. If you spent years earning love through silence, patience, or self-sacrifice, you may unconsciously repeat that pattern later. You may become the listener in every friendship, the fixer in every relationship, the emotionally available person who secretly feels unseen, and eventually resentment builds. Not loud resentment, quiet resentment, the kind that sounds like, "No one really knows me, no one checks on me, no one chooses me the way I choose them." But people cannot fully love a version of you they never fully meet. And that realization hurts. Because many people who learn to stay small are still waiting for someone to notice their pain without them saying anything. The child inside them still hopes someone will finally say, "You don't have to disappear to deserve love." Pause here for a moment. Think about how much energy it takes to constantly monitor yourself, to filter every emotion, to avoid bothering people, to stay emotionally acceptable all the time. That's not peace. That's survival mode wearing a calm face. And eventually the body keeps score. Overthinking, anxiety, emotional numbness, people-pleasing, feeling disconnected even around people you love. Your nervous system was never meant to carry that forever. But here's the part one really want you to hear. Learning to stay small was not weakness. It was intelligence. It was adaptation. A younger version of you figured out how to survive emotionally with the tools they had. That child deserves compassion. But survival strategies are not meant to become permanent identities. You are allowed to grow beyond them. And healing does not mean suddenly becoming loud, confident, or fearless overnight. Sometimes healing simply means this. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking your feelings to make others comfortable. You stop believing your needs are problems. You let yourself take up space emotionally, a little at a time. Maybe for you, healing starts with saying, "That hurt me." Maybe it starts with resting without guilt. Maybe it starts with realizing you were never too sensitive. You were just carrying emotions nobody helped you process. And maybe the biggest realization of all is this. The people who had to stay small as children often had enormous hearts. They cared deeply, felt deeply, noticed deeply. They just learned that expressing those parts came with consequences. But your sensitivity was never the problem. The environment was. And one day, slowly, carefully, painfully, you begin to understand something life-changing. You do not have to earn your right to exist comfortably around others. You do not have to disappear to be loved. You do not have to become emotionally invisible to deserve peace. And maybe for the first time in your life, you can stop shrinking.